Good morning. Market Day Report is on the air. We've had some trade in the overnight session, and we're, 12 minutes away from opening the day session. So let's look at overnight first, and the corn market is where we start. Higher trade overnight, 406 3/4, up 2 3/4, and settling just a tick off the day's high for corn. For soybeans, it was a higher trade. 1039.5, trading near the high end of the 7 3/4 cent trade range, up 3.5 on the session. We'll touch on soy meal contracts, which have traded higher for 2 consecutive days now in the day session. And again, mostly lower in the overnight trade. Bean oil has been lower for the past 2 sessions. Overnight was a little higher, but still 51s on many of those contracts. Wheat market, Chicago 510, up 4.5. Kansas City 4 1/4 higher at 505. Spring wheat higher across the board. And the cotton market overnight 67.65, up 5. Brian Hoops, President, Midwest Market Solutions. Brian, we've been talking flash sales a lot lately. Is it showing up in our weekly export sales?
Yeah, they sure are, Tony. Good morning. So last week's private export sales show up in this week's weekly export sales report, same as this week's flash sales that we've had. This didn't have any this morning, but we've had some earlier this week. They will show up in next week's weekly export sales. So very good weekly numbers once again for corn, soybeans, and for wheat. Wheat was 19.1 million bushels, down a little bit from what we've seen recently. And we continue to roll old crop corn and soybean sales into the new crop year. So we're at a negative 1 million bushels for corn for old crop, but it's 112 million for new crop corn, an outstanding number. Same thing for soybeans. It's a negative 200,000 metric tons basically of old crop beans. 42 million for new crop soybeans. Again, a very good number for soybeans there. So nothing wrong with our weekly export sales. We didn't have any private sales to talk about this morning. Trade's really going to be focused on these numbers. Maybe they've traded them for the most part already. Looking ahead to pro farmer numbers, and those pro farmer numbers continue to show record yield potential for corn and soybeans, but a big discrepancy from what the USDA had to say last week. For example, they came out with 199.5 bushels per acre for Illinois, which is a good number, down from last year. And the USDA is all the way up at 221, I believe. So a big discrepancy, and the yields are probably somewhere in the middle, higher than pro farmer, but lower than the USDA numbers. And I think the trade's becoming a little bit more comfortable with the fact that we have a big crop. It's not 188.8 bushels per acre that the USDA said it was. It's something less than that, but it's still going to be most likely record large.
Yeah, and again, I guess it's just me. Give me the bad news first. So let's set the high water mark, and let's work our way down to whatever that actual number is. I can see the benefit of dealing with that rather than having to wait till the end of the season and suddenly, bam, it's much bigger than anybody ever thought. Am I alone in that thought?
No, I think, a lot of producers, I think, have that same mentality. Less, of course, that you're trying to make old crop sales yet. Then it's a little bit disappointing when you hear these big numbers. But, the trade's going to sift through all these numbers, and somehow it's going to figure it all out. And I think it told us right after the report, it took those numbers and we sold off. But since then, we've actually rallied, and we've come off of our lows, and market's kind of working through these numbers and realizing that maybe this was the biggest number we're going to see of the entire growing season. And while these yields are going to be large, we may have enough demand to kind of work through some of this. With record export demand forecast by the USDA, we have a lot of demand for ethanol, for cattle, for hogs, turkeys, all these byproducts of corn. We're going to work through it. We're going to get through these price levels, and we may not see prices go as much lower as what a lot of people had originally thought when they looked at the USDA numbers.
Yeah, Brian, I'm glad you said that you threw livestock in there. So let's take a quick break. We'll come back in a moment and pick up that conversation. More record highs in the cattle market. More as Market Day Report continues after this. Four. I had to count it on my fingers here. 4 straight sessions that we've closed higher here in the cattle market. Live cattle futures yesterday up 230 on the front month at 238.62. And look down there, 237.72 from the February, up 305, higher across the board. Let's go to the feeder cattle market. Look at this number on the left-hand side with September at 358.87. That's a new all-time high for feeder cattle. We settled off of that a little bit, 358.80 on that September contract, up 637 yesterday. Again, we don't trade livestock futures overnight. October hogs, 90 bucks, down 15. Deferreds were higher. Brian Hoops, President, Midwest Market Solutions. The question is, will we have another record today?
Well, it seems like we've had one every day this week, and question will be, do we have some profit taking at some point come into this market? From a technical standpoint, do we take out the previous session's highs and uncover more buying interest? That seems to be what the pattern has been, is when we take those previous day's highs out, buying floods the market and we push higher. On the days that we're unable to do that, we do see some profit taking. Now, last time we were $10 premium, the futures over the index in feeder cattle, we dropped sharply about $7 or $8 one day, touch limit down. We closed last night over $10 premium again over the feeder cattle index. So these August futures go off the board next week and they have a huge premium. Usually $10 is considered kind of bearish. We are holding that again as of last night. Cash trade in the country developed a little bit yesterday, steady to $1 higher. So the cash trade's really not keeping up with where the futures have rallied. So August live cattle, all of a sudden they appear maybe a little bit rich to the cash markets. We had some cash trade yesterday at that 237. I think that was on the livestock auction markets. That's where they were a week ago as well. Futures are 238 and above. So yeah, we're holding a little bit of a premium right now. A lot of times that does signal that we may see some sort of a pullback in these markets, but it's so volatile, so crazy. It can change from 1 minute to the next based on some rumors or just some big orders hitting the markets.
Okay, we just finish off the numbers there for live and feeder cattle as we're set to open that market with trade in less than 5 minutes. Brian Hoops is President, Midwest Market Solutions. We'll see you back here in the morning.